Hi, welcome. I'm Scott Turansky. This is Joanne Miller, and we represent the National Center for Biblical Parenting. It's our objective to help parents develop biblical and practical strategies for working with their children. And in particular, we know that every family needs an individualized plan. So we're often trying to help parents develop that plan. And we can write books, and we have written books and recorded CDs that help people generally, but often parents need a specific plan for their children. So this format allows us to dig a little deeper into a family's life and try to give them a plan for their situation. So that's what we're going to try to do here. And we're talking to Angie. Angie, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
All right, Angie, why don't you tell me, first of all, I want to find out who lives in your home. I don't need to know the names of the people, but I'd like to know if you have a husband living in the home and if you have, uh, well, obviously you have children, whether we have a boy or a girl and what age. So if I could have the ages and genders of your kids too.
sure. Oldest child is 6 years old,
Okay,
boy.
right, okay,
Then we have a boy, 4 years old,
okay,
and we have a girl who will be 2 in March,
okay.
so almost 2.
And do we have a husband?
And dad, yes, dad lives in the home.
Okay.
He's self-employed.
Oh, that's an advantage.
Yeah,
Okay, great. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what's going on in your family and how we can help you?
yeah. The reason why I wrote in was it just seems that we have a lot of situations that seem to unravel so quickly. Um, it just can happen time and time again where we have something fun planned or just even something simple, and it just can tank pretty quickly because of the attitude, and it's always about him, and it just seems like he's kind of a high maintenance kid and just requires a lot of time, energy, and it's kind of taking away from the other ones because we're so focused on him and dealing with his issues, and that the other ones just kind of, especially my middle child, I get concerned over.
Because you feel like he's
Yeah.
not getting the attention he needs.
Yeah, but the funny part is that he doesn't seem to want it or need it, but I know that he does.
Okay.
But he's kind of a loner, and so it's just
Okay, let's talk about your son. And this is your son who's 6 years old, is that correct?
yes.
All right. When you say that he is negative or he takes a lot of energy or is high maintenance, what do you mean by that?
Well, I guess the time it takes to address his bad attitude, or I can feel in his voice, he's starting to get upset. I can sense that he's on the verge of a breakdown, and just the time, energy, having to um, address the negative attitudes and the outbursts and
All right. When you spend a lot of
things
time
like
with
that.
him to work with him in that level, are you able to help him switch over to a positive attitude or does it tend to remain negative?
Um, well, on a typical day, like I homeschool with him, and no other learning can take place until his attitude is kind of in check. There's days where he'll be very compliant and into it, and then the next day it's a totally different story and has an excuse for everything and whining and complaining, and um, just trying to address that attitude. And eventually he'll come around, but it could take hours
Okay.
just to kind of get him in a frame of mind where he's willing to listen and to do what I ask.
All right. And how is he doing in his schooling? Would you say he's on the academic front? Is he up to par or is he on track with you or is he behind?
No, I think that he has areas where he's doing well. He likes math, and so he'll tend to do more of that. But for me, it's just a simple following an instruction, that if I start getting attitudes or if he starts to get frustrated, I have to be right there to kind of be available for questions, because otherwise things can unravel very, very quickly.
All right, let's say you're
If
working.
I'm not available and he's frustrated, he can just start throwing pencils and start having a fit and just throwing his books and just running away, and unless I'm right there to help,
All right, so
which
when
I'm
you,
fine to do. It's just
yeah,
it takes away from the other kids.
sure, I understand. I homeschooled, my wife and I homeschooled our children when up through until high school, one of them all the way through. But anyway, I understand what you're saying. And I remember with our oldest son, Josh, we often had to sit at the table with him, or things tended to deteriorate rather quickly. We have 5 children, so I mean, trying to homeschool all 5 of them had its own challenges. But let's go back here. When you sit with him at the table, working on something like a spelling project or working on something else, reading, or something that isn't one of his strengths, is he able to maintain and stay on it when you're present?
Yes, if I can tackle the attitude issues, which can take a long time.
Okay,
But if I can get him to a frame of mind where he's willing to listen and to participate, then he will hang in there with me, and I can,
all
work
right.
with him.
So you have 2 problems.
But
One is the
typically,
introductory problem where you're trying to get him on task and to get him to the table or get him started in the project. The other one is when he starts to lose interest or get frustrated, then you have to keep him on task again. Are you saying those are 2 different things?
yes,
Well, I'm saying they're 2 different things. So, what I'm
yeah,
trying to do is I'm trying to break this problem into pieces already to try to have a plan for addressing them. That's why I'm making that
okay.
comment. All right, let me ask you this: how does he get along with his brother and sister?
He's very nurturing and loving with the baby girl. The brother, however, he can be pretty, um, not very nice too, and I'm like, you don't even know how good you have it. He's got like the easiest brother in the whole world, and he's still like,
So he gets frustrated
crazy.
with his brother sometimes, and he grabs something from him, or I mean, how does he treat his brother?
We're working on that, but I have seen improvement. But yeah, there's times where he's not very nice to him.
Okay. All right. And what I'm particularly trying to
Not very loving.
I'm trying to measure his frustration level in different situations. You're telling me that coming to the table to do schooling is a source of frustration for him. You're telling me that when he's in a difficult task, something not like math, then he also experiences a frustration level that exceeds his threshold and he has a problem there. Now I'm asking the question, does the same thing happen as he's playing with his brother?
Yes.
Okay, so we see a frustration level increase in him, and when this frustration level increases, then his pattern is you're saying with his brother, he takes control by being mean sometimes, and when he's with you, it sounds like his low tolerance for frustration results in a poor attitude. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to the attitude with you during schooling. How does it manifest itself? What does his bad attitude look like?
Throwing pencils, throwing books, just giving me every excuse known to man about why he can't write a simple word. Basic, any simple instruction. Just, oh, I didn't get enough sleep last night, and
Okay.
like, really, you're sick.
All right, let me come back to, I want to ask 2 more questions that are unrelated to exactly to where we are, and I'll come back to this in a moment. Are your 3 children natural born children of you and your husband?
Yes.
Okay, and is your son who's 6 years old on any medications?
No.
Okay. Does he have any allergies to food or anything else that you're aware of?
No.
All right. So the frustration that he experiences in his life is primarily situational, that he doesn't like what's happening outside in his environment, and so he reacts to that. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he reacts to it by throwing things or being rather physical. Does he also respond with verbal, with words that are unkind?
Yes.
And does he sulk or does he blow up in anger?
Both.
All right. So it sounds to me like what we're trying to do is hone in here with him on a specific problem that he has a low tolerance for frustration. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And he has when he gets frustrated, he has some poor coping mechanisms for dealing with that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so let's approach it from that level to start with. As we looked up in the records a few minutes ago, Joanne told me that you've been on a previous webinar with us. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And after that webinar, it looks like you purchased some materials from us. In particular, you purchased the Kids Honor Club. Have you received that yet?
Yes.
Have you been able to look at it or try to use it at all?
I've looked at it. I haven't started implementing anything yet, but I do have the book on attitudes on whining and complaining and you and your kids.
Okay.
And so I've been working with that book. It's
All right.
like my second Bible.
Okay, so you have our book, Say Goodbye to Whining, Complaining, and Bad Attitudes in You and Your Kids, and you have the children's program based on that book called the Kids Honor Club. Because you have those resources, I want to refer to them now and show you how you can use them, because it sounds to me like your son has a low threshold for frustration. Now, a threshold is the level at which, when the frustrations, let's say they're coming up from the floor, penetrate the threshold, and that's when children feel overwhelmed or they act out. And he has a low threshold for frustration, and our desire now is to raise the threshold so that he'll be able to handle the frustrations of life more effectively. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
So, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to move him in his character level. We're going to raise the character threshold for him primarily. Now, we can move the threshold different ways, but we're going to use character, which is like a heart response for him, patterns of responses. If we look at the heart, we see that the heart contains the tendencies that we have for our operating principles. And he has, when he starts feeling uncomfortable inside about what's going on, he has patterns now of reacting to that, which include hitting people, throwing things, acting out with his words, pouting sometimes, or erupting in some kind of an angry exchange. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to try to change him with God's grace. We're going to try to influence him to have a greater tolerance for frustration. Now, we want to do this using a multifaceted approach. So I'm going to try to list several things here that will become part of your strategy, okay? So,
Okay.
You're working on a computer, right?
Mhm.
So you can see what I'm writing here. Is that correct? I haven't started writing
Yeah.
yet, but I'm going to start writing in a minute. Let's try to black. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a number of strategies that might work. Okay, these are possible strategies for you and your family. There are other people listening to this webinar. They might want to apply some of these things in their family. But you have a special son here that needs a particular kind of strategy, and you're going to take certain ones of these and move them over to become your strategy. But more importantly, what we want to do is we want to develop a plan for your son. Okay, and we want him to embrace this plan and understand it. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to have a talk with your son, and I'm gonna give him a name just so I can refer to him that way. Okay, I'm gonna call him Billy.
Okay.
And what we want to do is we want to develop a Billy plan. This Billy plan is something that we want him to embrace. So what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to offer you several ideas here in just a moment, all right? And you're going to try to slide over whatever ones you think will work with him, but you're going to draw the same chart for him. And you're going to say to him, Billy, we're going to develop a plan. Here's what you want to do. You want to say, Billy, I've noticed that we have some tension in the mornings, and I can tell you're not happy with what's happening, and I don't feel very happy about it either. But I know that you're not very happy because you get frustrated with things. You get frustrated with your brother. You get frustrated with English. You get frustrated when I call you to leave your activity and to work on schooling. And so all of those things you're going to need some help with. So guess what? We're going to work on that. And I'm going to help you. And this is a great family to learn it in because we've got a lot of ideas. We have the opportunity to be homeschooled, which means we can put some more time during our day into this. So that'll help you a lot. But we're going to work on this to help you have a greater ability to handle your frustration. Because what we don't want is, you get frustrated, then you start hitting or yelling or throwing something or having a bad attitude. And it just drains the energy out of our family. So, Billy, we want to be careful about that. Does that make sense to you so far, Angie?
Mm-hmm.
What I've done so far in this first part of the conversation with Billy is I am trying to give him some vision about why we're going to do what we're going to do. Because we've got several pieces of this pie we're going to work on, but he needs to understand why we're doing this, and we want him to be part of the plan. So what we're going to say is we're going to draw this chart again for Billy, and we're going to say, Billy, here's the chart. I'm going to give you several ideas on this side. I want you to tell me which ones you want to slide over here to be your solutions so that we can develop a plan for you for handling your frustration level. Now, let me define frustration for you, Billy. And so we're going to define frustration as when we feel uncomfortable because things aren't the way we'd like or something. I just made that up. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, okay? But we're trying to define this for Billy. Billy has a problem. I'm trying to define it for him. So I'm saying it sounds to me like his emotions start to increase, negative emotions, when things aren't happening the way he'd like them to happen. So we make up that definition for him. That's frustration for Billy. It might be something different for somebody else. But for him, that's how we're going to define it. Now, when you experience this frustration, this uncomfortable feeling, here's what we want to do instead. We want to develop honor. Now, the reason I chose honor is because you have the honor curriculum and you're going to be teaching that to your son. You may as well use the curriculum you have to do that, so I'm going to use that word. But other families might choose to use the word perseverance or graciousness or something else that describes a positive response instead of the negative response. And we're going to start using that word to define where we want to go with him. So we're not just focusing on the negative, we're also focusing on the positive. Where we want to go is honor. We're trying to take him in that direction. Does that make sense to you, Angie?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to an honor approach. So we want to define honor for him in ways that he can understand. Now, you'll see some honor definitions in the book, and you can use some of those. But I would say let's try to define honor for you in those situations. Now, if I were working with your son, and this is what you want to do with him, you want to say something like this. Tell me, what makes it difficult for you when you know we're going to do spelling, or what's the subject you find the most trouble with? That's what I'll say to kids. He says, I don't like spelling, or I don't like reading, or whatever. I say, okay, now when you know reading is next, how do you feel inside? And I want him to be sensitive to that, so I'm going to ask him, draw him out in that area, and he's going to say, it's terrible, I hate reading, I don't want to do that at all. So he's starting to express his negativity, and then at that point, I want to stop, and I want to say, okay, here's what we want to do. It sounds to me like you're making a connection between reading and these negative feelings. And you're going to feel these negative feelings, but what I want to do is help you know how to respond to them. So we have to have things that we can say to ourselves in order to get through reading. There are some days where you do better with reading than others, right? And he says, yes. Say, okay, what do you tell yourself in those moments that allow you to get through this? So what we're trying to do now is we're trying to change the way he thinks. And we're trying to change the things he says to himself. He's meditating in his heart. The scriptures talk about the heart containing all kinds of things, but there's the one verse that says, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Now, what that tells me is that there's meditations going on in the heart. Children are saying things. We want to change what he says. So what are some of those things we want to say? I would say, now, son, what are some ideas here of things you could say? Let me give you some ideas of what some people might say. Some people might say something like, if I work hard, I'll be able to get done with this quickly. Or somebody, and I'd write that all out here. I'm not going to do it now for sake of time, and because I can't write on this tablet very clearly. Or I might say, I might say to him, because anything I can draw to him for his plan, I want to write down on his side. How do you get through the reading experience more easily some days than others? What do you say to yourself? How does that work? And what I want to do is capture the things he's saying to himself in order to make it through. So we're going to list those things for him, because the first thing we're trying to do is change the way he thinks. Okay, that's number one. Now, we're going to identify a number of things that he can say to himself, and you're going to list those. Then, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to try to change the way he acts. So we're going to choose some different responses. If we use honor in the picture here, we're going to talk about honor in some ways as having a good attitude. That's one of the words. What does a good attitude mean? And a good attitude means being positive when I feel like being negative. Oh, well, that's good. That can write down in my thinking side. How do you be positive when you feel like being negative? What are some actions that we can do that will help you when you start to feel negative? One of those often is like taking a deep breath. So I'm writing here, take a deep breath over on this side. Now you're going to choose, Billy, which ones you're going to move over to the other side. But I want to give you some ideas. In fact, why don't you help me? Let's think of some other possible ideas we can put here. So when you start to feel bad or negative about something, let's say your brother's starting to mess with your Legos, and you want some of his Legos or something, you're starting to feel frustrated. What are you going to do in that moment to keep yourself on track so that you don't hit your brother or throw something at him? And we're starting to list these things on this side because we're developing a plan for him on this side. Does that make sense, Angie?
Yes.
What I'm trying to do is develop a cooperative plan between you and your son that he's helping to develop. We're going to hold him to it using another part of our plan called firmness. But right now we're just trying to form the plan and allow him to be part of the formulation of that plan in order to make it through.
I have
So
a quick question on that.
go ahead.
If he's resistant to even coming up with ideas, if he won't, if he's resisting to even come up with ideas, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Is that part of the firmness plan then?
Well, yes.
You know what
In
I'm
fact, we may have to say to him after schooling is over on a day when he's free to go play. I would choose that time because now he's more motivated to enjoy his free time. That might be the time when I say to him, son, I want a plan for the things that you're going to say to yourself so we can have a good day. Or even a better time to do this is after he's had a good day. If we can capture some of the things that he's done right in that day, then I think we can be more effective with him. But in the moment, if he's so developing the plan isn't usually going to happen at a discipline moment. We're going to apply it at a discipline moment using some firmness, and we're going to use a break and things that you're probably already doing with him in order to bring that about. But we have to change what he believes. We have to have a plan. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So what you might say in that situation, if he refuses to be part of the plan, you're going to say, I'll tell you what some other kids do when they're in this situation, and you list 5 things. And then you say to him, here's the paper. I want you to go sit down for a little bit, and I want you to think about it, and you come back and tell me which one of those things are best for you. In fact, I'd like you to think of something extra, one other thing besides what's on the list that you think you could do that will develop your plan. So we're sending him away. He has no other choices but to work on the plan, because we're going to have a plan by the time we're done here. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's where your firmness comes in at that point. I'd hate to take away time from homeschooling in order to make that happen, but so at some time you're going to have to develop the plan. Now, once we have the plan, we want to talk about that plan. We want to post the plan. We want to ask him about the plan on a regular basis, and then we want to hold him accountable to the plan when we find ourselves getting frustrated. So when you see him starting to get frustrated, you want to call him out to a place. So I would leave the dining room table where you're doing your schooling for a moment, and I'd call him over to the couch, and I would say to him, Billy, look, we're having a problem here. Let's look at the plan again. Can you work the plan? So let's say you start your homeschooling morning at 8:30, and we're here at 8:30, and we normally have resistance right here at 8:30. Now we're trying to push this off. Maybe we can get resistance back to 8:45 before we get started, or maybe we can get through an hour of the day to 9 o'clock. And then what I would want to do at periods of time here in the morning, say, son, I really appreciate it. I can tell you're trying hard. I can tell you're working your plan. Okay, so anytime we got progress, we want to say to him, we want to affirm his ability to work on the plan, and we also want to ask him, what is your secret to success? Those are really important words that you can ask him. When he's doing well, what's your secret to success? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the operating principles of his heart. We're trying to move him forward, and so we're trying to convince him, persuade him in his heart to live differently. And that's if he starts feeling better about the way he's handling himself, it's going to feed on itself, and we'll be moving forward. Let's say that you get 15 minutes in your day, and all of a sudden the bad attitude comes. We have a problem. At that moment, we want to stop the forward progress, and we want to say to him, even in an encouraging fashion at the moment, son, I'd like you to go over and take a break, go walk in the hall or something, and I want you to think about, see if you can make the switch back. You were doing okay. I'd like to see you make the switch back. So that's where our firmness comes in. As soon as we see him switching, we're not trying to talk him out of having a bad attitude at that moment, typically. We're saying, whoops, it's starting to come on. I think let's stop what we're doing right now. I'd like you to go take a break and think about it and come back and see me in a couple minutes. Try to make the switch. Come on, I think you can do it. Go make the switch and come back and see me. Does that make sense, Angie?
Yes, I like that.
Now, one of the reactions he may have at that point is that he may, no, I don't want to do this, and just continue in a bad attitude, at which point then you're going to enter into maybe consequences, or you're going to move him into a break for a longer period of time until he can recover, or whatever else you're doing now. What I'm trying to do is give you some other plans to try to help him make some changes. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Now,
there's a lot of times where yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, because I was going to say where there's times where he'll say, I'll say, it's time to take a break. Your attitude is, you need to check this or whatever, and he'll say, okay, I'll do it, and then he'll just keep pushing.
Yeah.
So
his response to you when you tell him to take a break is, no, I don't need to take a break. I can do it better. But then he doesn't.
Yeah, I'm fine. So it's the resistance to...
Then I would say to him, in those moments, you have a couple of choices. I mean, there's lots of different ways to parent here. If he's saying, okay, I've got it, and you think that maybe he wants to change without going to a break, I would say to him, okay, here's what I want you to do then. I'll let you continue. I just want you to take a walk around the living room there. Take a couple deep breaths and come on back right away, and we'll continue on. Let's show me that you're changed. And when you come back to the table, sit down. I'll know you're changed by the way your face looks, by the way you're breathing, and the way you approach the next paragraph as we read it together. Does that make sense?
Yes, I like that.
So this is your chance, son. Go ahead. Show me that you've changed, and prove it by the way you're working with me. If you're not working with me and you're frustrated, you need to take a break. It's not just that I'm disciplining you. That's what you need to do for your own heart. You need to pull back. You need to settle your heart down and come back. That's what we're trying to do here.
Yes, I like that. That's good.
Okay? I think what I'd like to see you do as you're working with him is open your Kids Honor Club to Chapter 8, which is all about anger. And there are 3 different kinds of anger mentioned there. There's frustration, anger, and rage are all on a thermometer there in that Chapter 8. And I think you want to talk to him about when he's experiencing the frustration, he needs to see the thermometer is going up, and let's catch it there and move it down instead of allowing it to escalate. That's the visual picture of what you want, and then there's some strategies in that lesson that I think will help you as you continue on through that lesson of the Kids Honor Club, but you'll also learn about bad attitude and other things in that material that I think will help you a lot, okay?
Okay.
All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the phone lines and allow other people to ask some questions, but we can come back to you if you'd like. You have your computer in front of you, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, so you have the ability to ask a question via your computer. That is, raise your hand. In fact, all of you who are listening to this have the ability to raise your hand by pushing a button in the software, and that identifies that you'd like to ask a question. And so I'll be happy to respond to other comments that you have or specific challenges that you face in your own situation. So I think we have a question by Wanda. Wanda, can you hear me? I think you muted her again.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now, Wanda. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old son and a 3-year-old son.
Okay.
And basically, on the selfishness issue, basically when the 7-year-old's really good most of the time playing with the 3-year-old, and then, the 3-year-old comes and wants to get in there, but he's not going to play nice the whole time. And so then, I have my 7-year-old saying, well, you know what, this is mine, and he's ruining my stuff right now, and mine. And then the 3-year-old starts, well, this is mine. So how can I make them feel like they want to work together with love and all that kind of stuff?
Okay. I was with my grandchildren a few weeks ago, and I have a 6-year-old and a three-year-old grandson. And I had brought them Beanie Babies as a gift, and as boys often do, they were using them as bean bags to throw in a trash can. And so, but one of the things that I saw that was happening is that they would throw them, and the 6-year-old would run real fast to get it and beat the 3-year-old. Oh, I beat you. That kind of competition often happens between children, and it sounds to me like your 7-year-old is having this low tolerance for frustration maybe, or he's just being selfish at some points. And so I use the experience of Beanie Babies getting thrown into the trash can as a time to practice some things. And so I called over my oldest grandson and I said, okay, look, you know who really is the winner? The Bible tells us the winner is the person who's the servant. That the first will be last, the Bible says. So here's what I want you to do to show me that you're the real winner, not the one who races over there. You're the real winner by encouraging your brother and telling him, good shot, that was a good shot, or almost. Those are encouraging words. So I want you to stand here with me right now while your brother throws the bean bags, and I want you to say some encouraging words. Let's practice that now. And so he did. And so I said, okay, go ahead. Now remember, if you're going to be encouraging to your brother, that means sometimes you're going to let him get to the beanbag first and pick it up, and you're going to say, good job, you got it. So what we're doing is I'm using what was a competitive activity as therapy for developing some honor in their relationship together. Does that make sense, Wanda?
Yes.
So I would suggest that in the situation where your 7-year-old is experiencing frustration with a 3-year-old, I can imagine what that's like. In fact, you might even say to your 7-year-old, I can imagine that your 3-year-old brother often is irritating to you because he's only 3. We have a job to do. We're trying to honor your brother and care for him because that's one of our jobs. I try to honor you. That's why I buy your favorite cookies when I go to the grocery store. I buy the cereal that you like because I'm trying to honor you. We honor each other in this family. You honored me the other day when you brought me those dandelions in from the house, from outside, and brought them in the house. That's honor. It may make my heart feel so good. When you give me a hug, that's honoring. As brothers, you guys need to honor each other. And so I want you to help me teach your brother what honor looks like. Let's practice together when we're playing in this particular game. Does that make sense to you, Wanda?
Yes, yes.
So using the same, we happen to be on this theme from our book, Say Goodbye to Whining, Complaining, and Bad Attitudes in You and Your Kids. So I'm using some ideas out of that book that I think will be helpful, because what they do is they communicate this important concept of honor that helps children to develop some real strength in the way that they relate together. That's what we want. Honor always addresses how we're relating together. So that may be helpful for you.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Does someone else have a question, or would you like me to talk more about honor? By the way, if you don't want to talk, or you don't have the ability to talk on the computer or in a phone, then you can type in your question in the chat feature at the bottom of the webinar on the right-hand side, and we'll be able to read your question in case you're unable to communicate with the phone or whatever you're on. Okay?
Scott, we have a question. Lisa has a question.
Okay, Lisa.
Hey, I have a 6-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old son, and a 2-year-old son. So life is quite busy. We have been struggling for a very long time with bad attitudes, negativity. I feel like it's getting worse instead of better.
Okay.
I am probably struggling between just flying by the seat of my pants and parenting the way I was raised, which, just seems so natural, as opposed to, really following more a biblical model. We've been to your conference. We loved it.
Okay.
Loved the book. Some of the things that we've tried in the book didn't really work, like taking a break.
Yeah, okay.
We just have such a strong-willed child. Like taking a break, just, like what Jennifer, I think her name was Jennifer, what she was saying, where the child just starts pushing back. Oh, no, I can do it. I don't need a break. She would be laying on the floor screaming and turning purple that she doesn't need a break, but refusing to leave the room. So we've disciplined generally by putting her in timeout in her room. Lately, we're just seeing such negativity that there's something wrong with everything. The food, her clothes, her friends, us, her brothers. I mean, it's just like every facet of life. Sorry, that was not even a real question. That's just where we are.
Okay, I understand. All right, so we can approach this on a number of levels. Your daughter, and I'm not asking you a lot of questions, I'm going to have to make some assumptions here in order to try to give you some direction here. Your daughter it sounds to me, it has a pattern of reacting a particular way to given situations that she faces. It sounds to me like she doesn't have a very good response to correction to start with.
True.
So we're probably going to have to work on developing a routine for correction. I would suggest that a child who's unresponsive to a break needs to learn how to take a break. So, I don't think I have time to go into how we do that with children at this point. Let me just give you a quick overview. Children need to learn how to take a break. It's an adult skill. So if they can't take a break now, then they're more likely to react later and solve problems instantly instead of pull back and rather than do something they would regret. And so taking a break is really important. You say you use timeouts. Are timeouts working? Or is that what you mean by a break?
They do sometimes.
Okay.
Yesterday she had a fabulous day. Came home, was wonderful. I just praised her and praised her and praised her,
Yes.
Not going overboard, but, oh, you did your homework. Great. You did this.
Good.
That was great. You're talking so nicely. Thank you for a pleasant dinner time. And then today she came home from school, and it was just awful. So it's not always exactly the same. We do have a lot more bad days.
So today, did you send her to timeout?
After refusing to do her homework, laying on the floor and dawdling, after I had told her, you've got 15 minutes to go do your homework, and then we have to do something else. And she didn't do it. And then, I did. I sent her to her room. She almost missed dinner. I ended up setting the timer and saying, you've got 15 more minutes to finish your stuff and come down, and then you can eat.
And did that work?
I gave her a little bit of grace because she was within 2 minutes of making it down.
Right. But you motivated her. She moved forward given...
She did move forward.
Okay, so you separated her from the other activities. You told her you need to complete the task before you can come back and enjoy the meal or whatever it was that you were doing in family life, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. So I like that approach, okay? And that's very similar to what we teach in a break because we're requiring the child to change the heart before the child comes back. And that's essentially what you did. Show me that you're doing the right thing and you're willing to cooperate here before you come back and be a part of family life and enjoy the benefits of this family. So I would take that same model and use it on in a number of ways. But, okay, so let's go back here. I think your daughter has a poor response to correction, and so we're probably going to have to do some therapy with her. We believe you're the best therapist for your daughter if you have a good plan. So I would suggest that practicing the correction routine, however you're going to do that, or whatever it looks like, would be helpful. To having her take a break or time out or whatever you want to call it, you can do, but if she responds poorly to that, then when she comes back, I would send her back again. Show me, before you're free to go, okay, we're going to practice taking a break. You need to show me that you can take a break the right way, because that's an adult skill. It's not a childish skill. We're going to work on that in order to make this happen. So I would practice the break, and sometimes I would practice it before snack time. Say, we're going to have snack in a minute. Show me you can take a break, even if she hasn't done anything wrong. Because we're going to develop this into a routine in order to make this work. Now, in the heat of the moment, when she's upset and throwing herself on the ground, if she refuses to take a break, there's a number of things we can do. I mean, you can use other consequences, whatever or if you're trying to teach a break, sometimes we even restrain children at that point to show them that a break is not optional. But if you're going to restrain a child, then right away the child needs to go and take a break. So the point is, we're saying to children, this is not optional, this is a required course, and that a break is important. So that's going to be one component, is that it sounds to me like you need to do some practice sessions in this area of correction. It also sounds to me like we would benefit from some practice in cooperation with her that has her giving up her agenda to do what you're asking her to do. And so I would sit down with her and I'd say, here's where we're trying to go here. I see that sometimes you don't like what's happening and you have a bad attitude, and then it affects the whole family. So I'm going to be asking you to do things that you don't want to do, more things, because I want you to practice doing the right thing. So we're telling her what we're going to do. We're saying, here's how I want you to respond, and we're going to do this thing about what she thinks or how she's going to act. We're going to develop those things for her plan, and then we're going to put some pressure on her. And we're going to say, okay, I'd like you to put away the book you're reading, and I'd like you to come here and help me in the kitchen. And so we're going to practice interrupting her, so that, because all of that is therapy. We're just trying to build that part of her heart where she's being interrupted from one thing and giving up that agenda and doing something else. So if we do some cooperation therapy and we do some correction therapy, then we're working on heart issues with her and practicing moving in the right direction. We should see some significant change happen in her to move her out of that. The selfishness that we often see in children, we can handle with honor, because and that's what we've talked about up to this point. Honor is getting outside yourself and thinking about someone else. I want you to tell me, what would make your brother happy? So that's what I do with my grandson, to the 6-year-old. I said, what can you do to make your brother happy? That's moving out of the selfishness into the honor category, and then we're affirming the child for being honoring and moving in a more mature way. That's what we're all trying to do as adults, and honor is a God quality that children are taught in the home. So that's how I would handle selfishness. But it sounds to me like we need to step back here and we need to practice the correction and instruction a little bit more. What you want to do is formulate what you want that to look like, correction and cooperation therapy. Well, here's what I expect to happen, and then you're going to put some pressure on her at points and move that. And it's not going to be easy at first, but show me that you can respond, and I'll let you go back and watch the movie. Okay, or I'll let you go back and read the book or play with the game. Show me that you can respond the right way. That's what I'm looking for, because we're trying to build in you this quality. We're moving toward point B in a child's life, not just talking about point A. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. I think we're seeing an inordinate amount of selfishness, but I think it's rooted in the other things that you were talking about, the fact that she's not following with being able to be corrected, she's not cooperating. I think all of those things are really causing the selfishness that we see.
Yeah.
So we might have some elements of frustration too, and I think some of those things you talked about earlier are going to be helpful.
Sure.
But I think these other things that you just pointed out are probably our place to start.
Yeah. Next week we're doing a webinar on, it's called a parenting makeover, or families just saying, we need to start over. We don't know what we're doing, or something along that line. And so we're going to start from scratch. And I think essentially what we're going to end up talking about, I don't know, I think this is a 15-year-old that we're working, a parent of a 15-year-old. So we're going to talk about these same kind of things. Let's go back to some basics in family life. What is our job as a parent? What is our job as a child? Your job as a child is to learn how to obey and show honor. That's your job. My job as a parent is to try to keep things moving in this family, to love you, to care for you, but also to train you. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, how can we work together to accomplish our jobs? We both have jobs to do. And we're going to go through and do that. Now, you got a 6-year-old. That'll probably be a little easier than my 15-year-old conversation that I'll have next week. But sometimes we just have to go back to the basics before we can go on to some more advanced material. And I think that the basics are things like cooperation and correction. Those are going to be fundamental. Another basic is being able to accept no as an answer. Let's just start right there. Then, once we're developing those things in family life, we can add these other important qualities like honor, or deal with sibling conflict, or handle even emotional challenges. But the basics give us some tools that we can use and we can apply to lying or other issues that come up in family life that we need to address. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that would be helpful. Does anybody else have a question before I summarize here and we conclude our time together? Let's go back to Angie just for a moment. Angie, can you hear me?
Yes.
Angie, what island are you on in Hawaii?
The Big Island.
The Big Island. Wow, that's great. I was a pastor of a church on Oahu for 8 years. And then
Oh,
my son just moved from Kauai, where he lived for 4 years, where he was developing a Bible college on the island of Kauai. So I love Hawaii, and I'm grateful that you called in today. So thank you. What
yeah,
we
I love your materials.
What we've tried to do in this particular webinar is we've tried to focus in on selfishness. Now, selfishness has a lot of different roots. Sometimes a child who's selfish is demanding. Other times, the child who's selfish handles their emotion improperly. Sometimes children are selfish because they feel uncomfortable inside, and so they react to life situations. In all of those cases, we're developing specific plans for the child. And what we have to do many times is we have to not just say to a child, okay, you're being selfish, stop that. We're focusing on where we want the child to go. How do we want them to develop? And we're involving the child in a plan for heart change, because children who are selfish are unhappy. That's just the reality of life. Anybody who's selfish is unhappy. And so we're trying to give up selfishness, and we're trying to exchange it for godliness. It's a great way to say it. Or we're trying to exchange it for thinking about other people. Once we can think about other people and focus on the Lord and how God is working in our lives, we become grateful people. And we're able to develop more flexibility. All these positive qualities that children need to overcome the selfishness that they're experiencing. So either way, no matter what problem you're experiencing with your children in this area of selfishness, you're going to use a plan like I suggested that says, here's the problem for a child. We have a problem here. You have a problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to help you make some changes. I know you're not happy with this because I can see you're upset a lot of the time. I'm going to help you develop some qualities. Here's some ideas about the way other people have handled this. Which ones of these seem to work for you? And we're going to try to get a child to embrace some of these ideas. Even if they don't, we're going to enforce them, and we're going to practice a new routine in order to help children make some significant changes on a heart level. That's what we're trying to do. The heart contains the operating principles of a person, and it's out of the heart that the mouth speaks, Jesus says. And so we know that the heart is at the heart of a lot of the issues that our children are experiencing. I want to thank you guys for being on this webinar with us, especially those of you who asked questions. Thank Angie for being our featured parent. We're going to send you all a feedback sheet so that you can respond to us. Tell us about your experience, and as a token of our appreciation, we'll give you a 20% off, I think, is it? 20% off discount in our web store. You have a coupon that you can use in the next few days if you'd like to do that as well. So thank you very much. If you're looking for more resources for the National Center for Biblical Parenting, you can visit us at biblicalparenting.org. God bless you and have a great rest of the evening.